Oh, Anthony, what's up, man?
Fellas, how are you?
Good, man. How are you, boy? It looks like covering the Warriors is taking a toll on you, man. You look beat, Anthony.
It ain't just been the Warriors lately. It's been your home squad has been a little bit draining as well, to be honest.
I understand. Well, it's true.
We was laughing yesterday.
It's two train wrecks colliding, and I happen to be in the middle of it.
We was looking at Steph after the Kings game the other day, like, whoo, we've seen that look before.
Many times. Yeah. No, it's they're both quite something right now in various ways.
Well, let's start with the one that matters the most, of course, Anthony Slater of the Athletic / New York Times with us here. It's as you noted, it's been eventful for you covering the Sacramento Kings here in recent weeks. We went from a Mike Brown firing to a 5-1 record with a first-time head coach, man. What do you we've been making sense of it live on the air for the last, 20 some odd hours. Like, what's your impressions of what's going on with Sacramento and Doug Christie right now?
I mean, they're playing harder. They seem to be, they're talking about like the game plan's been simplified. The clutch time stuff has been better. And, some of that obviously, maybe you can coaching, playing, whatever, like the 0-5 homestand that is kind of now known as like this poetic, tragic end to the Mike Brown era. Like those were like 3 of those were very winnable games. They're just momentary screw ups, which we all, remember them in detail, that are now flipping the other way. Right. Like I was at the Sixers game when they came back, they had the 15-0 run late. Like they didn't really play good in that game. They just kind of charged up late and, sprinted past at the finish line. And I'd probably say the same about that Heat game last night, right? It's probably 3.5 quarters of like not great basketball. Understandable, no Fox. You're probably a little tired on it back-to-back, but it's clutch time luck, but it's clearly a different energy. And, some of it maybe, especially with the jolt of the Mike Brown firing and the urgent situation around De'Aaron Fox, I think has created, a needed level of urgency around the team. That you feel, right? These feel like huge regular season games that they're almost playing with like fringe playoff level energy and focus. And in the regular season, that's going to lead to a lot of wins typically if you're just playing that hard, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And we love your work. We love your work. And at the beginning of the season when you were previewing the teams, you said you had a line where it's like, this is going to come down to the clutch record and what they can do in the clutch. And I ain't gonna lie to you, we had a good time with that. And we was like, if the Kings score more points than the other team, they'll win. Yeah, thanks, Anthony, thanks. And lo and behold, you were spot on. Yeah. You were right. You were dead on. I mean, because what was it, 3-12 in clutch games or something like that, before Mike Brown has been fired. And then I think they're either 3-0 or 4-0. I don't know how it gets defined, but since the coaching change, that has changed. Like they've been able to close in these clutch moments. Shout out to you. We were dead wrong. You were spot on with that. What was your thought like when you were thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the complex mix, but I thought part of their rationale on the DeMar DeRozan signing was, the fit seems wonky. We don't know if it'll solve the defense, but clutch player of the year, leads the in fourth quarter points. You match that with De'Aaron Fox. The idea was, in these close games down the stretch, you should be able to nudge over the top a handful more times than you maybe previously did the season before. And if you win 4 more games than you theoretically should because of, luck or chance, or if you could say strategy, if you get these 2 great clutch time players in the West, you guys know what 4 extra wins during the course of a regular season means. In this West, that's like 10th seed and 4th seed almost at this point. And also, I know being around the Warriors plenty the last few years and the way they've screwed up so many times in the clutch, like that's defined their season. And that's just because of how compact the West has become in a lot of ways. What leads to how you feel about a team. Again, I mean, as you said, it maybe it feels a little prophetic because of how the Mike Brown firing went down, but how different does that homestand feel? And different, they're 13-13, right? Entering that homestand, I think they were on a 3-game win streak. If they get that Nuggets game, remember, they should have won that game. They were leading most of the fourth. And look, this has nothing to do with anybody's job or who's doing well or who's, who is a correct signing. If DeMar DeRozan catches Domantas Sabonis' pass and lays it in, they win that game, right?
Mhm.
At least one of those Lakers game they probably should have won. We can go with like the mixed box out. That's the one that it feels like a little bit more, maybe obscure, but certainly the Pistons one, which we don't even need to get into the specifics. So we all know they probably should have won that. So if you go 3-2 on that homestand, you've at that point won 6 of 8 games, and you'd be sitting at 16-15. Mike Brown's not getting fired. They're going to LA, with him. And you're going on the radio show after the Pistons game, probably like they're gaining a little traction, soft portion of the schedule. Like it just doesn't feel as panicky, but because they screwed up in these very specific ways, which nobody was trying to screw up, and considering the organization that overrides all this, which let's be honest, can be a little panicky. They completely flipped the table. And at this point, I mean, at least the jolt of life seems to be working.
Yeah.
And what do you attribute that to? Is it as simple as Mike Brown's exit and Doug Christie's entrance? Is it desperation? Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, like clearly there's at least a few players that are being subtle with, voicing that they're ready for a different voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the simplification / what did Malik Monk said something last night about like having a player as a coach and the difference, there. I mean, again, these are subtle comments, but it's not hard to read too much into them. Like they're alive a little bit more. And I think Devin Carter's coming back as help, but it's not like they haven't had their own injury issues. There's just a level of life in the arena. Now, again, what is it? 14 of 18 on the road coming up. Obviously they're about to go to Boston. They're going to play at Milwaukee. A lot of tests coming up, and as this Kings season overall has been a great example of like 3 games changes the mood at any point, right? Even when Mike Brown was here, they went. I think they lost their first 2. It was like, oh, what's happening here? Especially after that preseason. Then they went 3-2, and it was like, okay, never mind, they're all right. And it felt like there's all these back and forth. So look, if they go on the road and they go 0-3 on this road trip, like, y'all are probably coming in next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like, like it's turning back around. But in general, right now, you've got to you guys have been in the building, right? I assume during these homestands. I mean, they're just like energy really matters in basketball. And I think they're more committed to playing faster. They're more committed right now to the game plan. And even if you could say, hey, look, Mike Brown is a very sharp tactician. If these guys weren't listening to him as much as they're listening to Doug Christie, they're going to play better with Doug Christie.
Anthony Slater of The Athletic here with D-Lo and KC. And I got to ask you a question about my guy. My guy is one of my favorite players in recent memory, all the way since Kentucky, Malik Monk.
Okay.
And he, it feels like a lot of times people put a ceiling on how good he is or how good he can be. It's like, he's Malik Monk, nice little energy guy or whatever. And we see him in certain situations, Sunday against the Warriors where he dominated that game. And, he was in a leadership role last night with De'Aaron Fox out. And you saw him in those in game 6 against the Warriors and what he was able to do in that game. What's the feeling on who he is as a player and how good he can be? Like, is he just kind of typecast as a 6-man type guy, or do people look at him as like, no, he could be like literally one of your top 2 players on a good team? I don't want to say championship, but on a really good team.
It's I guess you would say your first description of it, where the league seems to view him as like kind of a volatile 6-man who can shoot you into games and shoot you out of games and kind of can do wacky stuff defensively and might win you a game with a 32-pointer, but might go 2 of 11, make a few mistakes and, kind of just check out of the game all flustered. Because I say that because we saw like his market was laid bare this summer. Like nobody went and chased him down. If there was a belief from somebody out there, hey, that could be a starting point guard on a winning team, like, the Spurs, for example, right? They could have done several things this summer with their flexibility. They decided to basically take on the Harrison Barnes contract with some of their cap space to get a pick swap instead of going after. And this isn't just a Malik Monk thing, right? They could have gone Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Klay Thompson was available this summer. He was viewed in that realm of like not that valuable, not valuable to the point that you're like, can you be a top 3 player even on a championship type contender? But like let's be honest, like 6th man of the year is like extremely valuable. He probably should have won it last year and probably would have if he didn't hurt his knee. Right now he's starting. You win 2 games without Fox, and again, we're talking about how important every single regular season win is. Like those are 2 huge wins that you don't get if he's not re-signed at the bargain he was re-signed at. But at the same time, I can understand the opinion of like over the course of 82 games, if he's going to be, your absolute, 1A, 1B, probably a lottery team.
And how about Keon Ellis? Keon is the one really since the Doug Christie era has begun.
Yeah.
That people have kind of been scratching their head over, like, you're seeing guys like, Keith Smith tweet about it. Like, I can't figure out why Keon wasn't playing under Mike Brown. There seemed to just be something about Keon that rubbed Mike the wrong way, or Keon wasn't doing anything. And now you look over the course of these last couple of games, particularly Anthony, the last 3 that were without Keegan and 2 of them were without De'Aaron. Domas said last night, we can't win these games without Keon Ellis. Like, what is your opinion on Keon, and where do you think the disconnect was?
Yeah, I do think he came into the season, into camp, into the early season, like maybe trying to expand his game a little bit more. And it was a little bit more about the offensive end and like blossoming into this like next level of player. And I would say covering the Warriors, I'm dealing with like times 10 of this with Podziemski, where like Podziemski was this like glue guy doing everything, all first team rookie. And then this year he came in like, maybe I'll just be Jalen Brunson this year. I'm gonna go try to make an all-star team. Let me take a bunch of threes. Let me try to create a little bit more than I should have. And I do think there was a mini version of that with Keon Ellis early where he was maybe getting out of his game a little bit. And maybe that led to minimize playing time. Clearly, he should have been playing more. I Herter coming back. Maybe they tried to remember they started Kevin Herter after he didn't even play in the preseason early.
Mm-hmm.
That may have been trying to force Kevin Herter in to appease a veteran, try to lengthen the depth, get him going a little bit. And that seemed to stall maybe Keon Ellis's momentum a little bit early in the season. I think looking back on that retrospectively, you probably Keon Ellis should have just started opening night. But I am curious now because like he is getting big time minutes. Like he was unbelievable defensively last night. What did I see? 14 deflections. So many of those. Like I kept seeing Hawkes on him late and being like, Hawkes is gonna like kind of bully him to the rim, and somehow he was like snaking the ball away from him. But De'Aaron Fox is about to be back, right? This is a very minor injury. Keegan Murray's back. Let's assume you have your 5 main guys, including Malik Monk now starting and playing a ton of minutes. Who closes?
Mm-hmm.
Who does he close over DeRozan? DeRozan, who obviously hit a bunch of clutch shots last night, but if you're trying to play 2-way basketball, I am curious, how elevated this Keon Ellis role is, regardless of who's available. I think it's become very clear he is your 6th starter in a sense. De'Aaron Fox is out, he can start in that place. De'Aaron Fox is in, but Keegan Murray's out, he can start in that place and he can close in that place. But with every one of you available, which is expected to be soon, has he played himself, as Sabonis says last night, they don't win without him. Has he played himself into closing every single night? And if he is, who's not?
Yeah. The team has played well. They've had new energy with Doug Christie there and putting Keon Ellis in more of a prominent role, and it's been all good. But it doesn't negate the fact that, they may still want to do something with this roster, probably need to do something with this roster in the trade market. My thing, Anthony, has always been, I don't know how they get there. I don't know how you move, what pieces you have to move that would get you what you're looking for, whether it's a Cam Johnson or something like that. Do you think they have the assets to get somebody that, integral into what they want to do?
I think they do. I think it's a complicated conversation, but also simple. Like an unprotected Sacramento Kings future first-round pick is viewed very favorably by the league, right? You right now would want a 2028 Kings first-round pick if you're a rival team, because you're looking at the Kings going, what if De'Aaron Fox asks out? What if they have to blow it up? What if this era of Kings basketball, kind of careens over the next 12 to 18 months? That's why the Spurs were like, yeah, give us Harrison Barnes' contract. We'd love to have a pick swap in 2031 with the Kings. That's no guarantee it's going to end up being a top 10 pick, but there's at least that thought that it could become, like, you could see a situation present itself where it is. So if you attach a a very valuable first rounder to the, a Herder contract, Lyles, whatever, builds it up. Like, I do think that could get you that to me beats a lot of other teams that are either going to try to protect their picks, or maybe they're viewed as a more likely better team come 2028, 2029. So then the question becomes, if you take two steps back and you're really like concerned about how the Kings are going to be over the next decade and how they may have to rebuild if this Fox situation goes left over, into the summer and this season beyond, if he's not going to extend, do you want to give up a future first that might be a really valuable first in your rebuild for a fifth starter on this team? Cam Johnson, good player, would help, would make this team better, would make them more of a threat to not only make the playoffs, but maybe make some noise in the playoffs. Is that worth a future first that might be 6th overall? That if Fox asks out this summer, you're like, we could really use our pick in 2027. So I think that's the balance here, because to your questions, yeah, Herder and Lyles' contract are not getting you much. But when you attach a first round pick, it is in this market. Like, those are so valuable. So you tell me, like, do you think it's worth it to go much more all in on this team and risk a future that still feels very uncertain with Fox?
I do, because I look at it two ways. Number one, you're trying to win now with what you have, you know what I mean? And, you gamble on that. Also, I'm of the belief, much like what happened when they had DeMarcus Cousins and they were trying to trade him, you can just get a first rounder back if you trade Fox. Like, if it goes all bad and he wants out, it may not be like yours, or it may be a later pick or something like that, but you'll get a first rounder back in a Fox trade. So
you probably get 3.
Yeah,
really.
Right. Yeah.
So I wouldn't that wouldn't hold it up for me. Like, if it was a 28 first unprotected and Kevin Herder for Cam Johnson, like, yeah, let's do it. Or some other player, something like that. Like, let's do it. Because I can always get that. My thought is I can always get that pick back if it goes all bad and I'm trading De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, and to be honest, that is where that is so much in the next month in these negotiations and stalls and rumors you hear. Like, a lot of it is on what are the picks, what are the protections on the picks, right? Because I feel a whole lot better if you're it was a top 12 protected for Herder that they got in Atlanta, that now I think it's top 10. It's kind of stair stepping downward. But if they didn't protect that, you don't have Devin Carter, right? That pick would have been Atlanta's. So how protected could the Kings make that first round pick? Because I feel a whole lot better about them sending a first round pick out the door if whenever that clock comes up where you want to have that pick, that you're not giving up the 3rd overall pick in a draft that has, like this draft, for example, right? Imagine if you had a top 4 pick in this draft. I mean, that's potentially a franchise pillar. So the more you protect yourself, the better. But also, that's why these trades take so long. And a lot of times it comes right down to the deadline, because somebody has to budge here.
Pick swap.
Well, 2031.
Pick swaps are interesting. They're both, they can be more dangerous, right? Because let's take our minds into a 2031 world. I mean, Victor Wembanyama is going to be 7 at that point. I mean, maybe the greatest player ever. I mean, I'm going to
5 MVPs at that point. Yeah,
I might upset your listeners here, but he might have De'Aaron Fox throwing hook lobs to him in the finals. That might be the 30th pick overall that you're swapping. You're getting this first pick. And the concern is with the pick swap, there's no protections. Imagine if this is too scary of a world probably to live in, but imagine if you're flipping the 2nd pick for the 30th pick come that draft. Listeners on this radio show come 2031 are not going to be pleased. But then the other thing, and this is the point that matters, it matters in all sports. Do you think Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox care too much about 2031? Because if this does not go well,
I'll be dead by then. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Just swap it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm also of the belief, and I'm just going to die on this hill, that trading Fox doesn't constitute a rebuild. Not with this roster. I think this roster is good, and it has to be the right trade, obviously. And if it's loaded with draft picks, that doesn't help you. But if you have to send a player back, like De'Aaron Fox makes a ton of money. A combination of players and the draft pick doesn't really matter in this situation. It doesn't send me to it's over, tear this whole thing down. It's nah, you get the right players back to add to Malik and Domas and Keegan and DeMar. This team could still be good.
Yeah, it's just this West is so challenging, right? There's such a threshold. It's I think it's a bunch of good teams, not great teams. I do sit there and look everyone's kind of in disarray. It's sometimes I think we get lost in our little bubbles. I'm around the Warriors and the Kings a bunch, and obviously they've both had a bunch of stuff bubbling up. But it's like, look at the Suns right now. Like, are they trying to bully Bradley Beal into like giving up his?
Yeah,
But it seems
1,000%.
Dallas, like everybody's injured in Dallas. The Lakers, they're constantly kind of in this situation of flux. We can go down the list in the West. Denver,
The Rockets, Thunder, and Grizzlies are the only teams that haven't really been up and down. They've just kind of been up. The Thunder obviously been way up. The other two teams have been really consistent. It feels like Denver has found some consistency after kind of a weird start. But like you said, everyone else in the conference is whatever.
Yeah, it's like panic mode at all times. But I think that would be to your point of like, look, if you just get some veterans, if it's the right mix, and like, if Devin Carter rises up, and we'll see with him, he's played a couple games. Sure, like you can stay competitive, but and that the argument for that is like, look around the West. It's not like anybody, like everybody's kind of almost at the same level. But I would say where you're in trouble with no Fox is when you actually get to a potential playoff stage. Like you need those star scorers. And I mean, you saw it in the Warrior series, right? I mean, Sabonis was the best player, you would say, that season. But once the Warrior series started and it was playoff basketball and like schemes and more physical nature, like you need him and Monk, go get buckets. Go and like that's where Fox, that's what a lot of the teams that are thirsty for De'Aaron Fox, Houston, San Antonio, that's what they're missing is like, the star guard who can go get to 30 against really tough defenses. And that's where you could get a lot of depth back for Fox and picks that become more depth. But I do think if you want to win at the highest level, you need a star guard, and you'd be giving up a star guard.
Jalen Green. I don't know if he's as good as Fox, but that's you take your chances with a Jalen Green. That's because that's the other thing with Fox. I'm not. People are talking about the deadline. Like I'm not doing anything with Fox till the summer. Like
my read on the whole situation is it like almost everyone involved, like this will be a summer conversation because a lot of stuff needs to be found out before then. Obviously it has not trended in a great direction lately, and I don't think the Mike Brown firing and the way it went down helped. But the reality is, like, if an unlikely playoff run happens, circumstances change. Like there's still games to be played and games to potentially be won that could change everybody's mind.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not sure if the firing hurt.
I think how it happened.
I'm not saying he.
I say because like, look, if they play better, if they win more games, that matters. Like like it was done in such a way with such timing and such a lack of transparency that the entire world just like was like, well, nobody's going to come out and really say who did it, and it was done a day after he criticized, after Mike Brown criticized De'Aaron Fox, in a press conference, like, boop, microscope's going right over to the star. Yep. And it was like, maybe somebody in leadership should come out and be like, publicly in a press conference setting and be like, it wasn't him. Meanwhile, he had to come out in press conferences and, like, let's be honest, he was very clearly frustrated with how much he was getting blamed for it. Mm-hmm. And we haven't heard from them at all. I mean, like, we
never will.
Fine. It's their choice, but like, it's going to alienate the star a little bit. I mean, you would think. And the way he but again, if they win, they win, and that'll help. But
who made the call?
Who
to fire Mike?
I mean, clearly it was cumulative, but let's be honest. I mean, like most people believe it funnels all the way to the top.
Okay, that's what I thought you'd say. I'm just saying. There's a lot of people.
It has been adamantly relayed to me that De'Aaron Fox was not involved.
Right? Like, no, 100%. I think everybody is in agreement that De'Aaron Fox.
And I will say this: as we reported in the aftermath, me and Amick, we were being told, like, Monty McNair made the call, like literally physically made the call, which did happen, and that, like, it's Monty's choice, but there are a lot of people who believe whose choice it really was, again, is going further upstairs than that.
And I've said it a couple. Damian said he did what needed to be done. People may not like it. People may not. They like Mike Brown. He's nice with the media and all this other stuff. He's a great guy. The move had to be made, period. And it's being proven that that's the right move. Like, he had to go.
Would you agree that it wasn't done well?
Sure.
Oh, for sure.
Sure, but
absolutely,
he had to go. There's a lot of things he did that weren't done well. It was the right move. It was the right move.
I think it's fair, but I also think some of the backlash and some of the people kind of turn their nose down at the Kings a little bit in the aftermath. And again, look, they win, maybe it'll be proven to be the right move. It was kind of disrespectfully done. Not even just like, oh, they called him on the way to the airport, but like they didn't really even thank him. Like this guy did a lot for the Kings, including he got them back to the playoffs. Like to me, he provided a level of stability and professionalism to the organization that they'd kind of been lacking. And again, I'm not even disputing some of the mistakes and what led to what happened this year, but it felt so coldly done and like you've heard it from a lot of people across the league, and your reputation league wide really matters. So that's what I would say. Again, if you want to argue, like clearly they're playing better right now, I mean, like that's easy to see.
And I know Kings fans feel like this is a Kings thing. Who was Chris Finch's predecessor? Minnesota got their ass whooped for the way that they handled. I can't remember who it was. Was it Saunders' son?
I thought I was about to say, was it Adelman's son?
No, it wasn't Adelman's son.
No,
I think it was
Saunders.
Yeah,
okay,
because remember they fired him.
That's right.
And they're like, oh, Chris Finch is our new head coach, and everyone's like, wait, what? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's not just Sacramento who will get their ass kicked for the way like a firing is handled.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota got
they got
killed for that.
One.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And again, the other thing as we take two steps back, it's like if you just win in sports, everything like it's like what do they call it? Like the greatest perfume. Yeah. People would have still to this day been absolutely roasting what happened with the Kings, but they won 5 in a row. So it's like, I don't know, like what are the radio shows locally today? It's like, it's generally positive because if you win, like it's just going to remain positive. And you can be proven right in any level of sports if like you just end up winning games.
Winning 5 in a row is Paco Rabanne.
There you go. And man, we appreciate you, man. Good luck covering these 2 franchises you got on your plate for the next month or so.
I got my man working.
Well, as we talk about disastrous situations, I'm about to go cover Warriors Heat tonight in the Bay. Like the Heat.
Oh, Lord.
Talk about a situation.
Jeez almighty.
People love to kill the NBA. Like, like regular season basketball is not that interesting. I'm like, this is all very like the league is going crazy right now. But I mean,
just word of warning: Eric Spoelstra is in a terrible mood. He is in a terrible mood. So
everybody's in a terrible. Oh, Doug Christie's not in a terrible mood. But,
Doug Christie's feeling good right now.
Yeah, a lot of moods in this league, but I think it's been good. I think the theater's been good lately. That's all I'll say.
I agree.
We appreciate you, Ant-Man. Thank you, brother.
All right, fellas.
Take care, Ant.
That's our man, Anthony Slater. God.